Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 80 of the Custom Apparel Startups Podcast. My name is Mark Stevenson from Coldesi.
And Mark Vila here from Coleman & Company. And today we're going to talk about big accounts.
Yep.
We're talking about how to get big accounts when opportunity knocks for big deals.
That's a great title.
Yeah, it's a
but I feel like we should just take a moment and recognize that it's episode 80.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I should tell a story about before refrigeration where the
like
milk guy used to come and deliver milk, or ice or something like that.
It's a good amount of episodes. If this is the first time that you're listening, you can feel free to start here if this is relevant to you, but there's a whole lot of other episodes out there to listen to, so I recommend you kind of scroll back and you find, I don't think it got good till like 20.
Really?
Yeah.
I think like episode 7 was one of our
7?
best.
Oh,
I don't even remember what that was about. I just like that.
I just picked that number because I figure. No, actually, even since episode 1, I think they've all been great and they've had their right place. We've just gotten more experience.
It's true.
Yeah,
that's very true.
So today we're talking about big accounts.
Yep.
We're talking about when you get a phone call from a fairly large organization, maybe in your area, a university.
Yep.
Like the electric company.
Yeah, the electric company, water.
Somebody that's significantly bigger than you. Not just a company where the owner is calling you, but a company where they probably have a procurement
purchasing department.
They have a procurement department where
Yeah.
there's somebody who calls and gets quotes, and there's multiple people involved.
Right.
And you have to figure out how to properly handle that because it doesn't matter how much the purchaser likes you often.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if the president or the owner of the company is calling you directly, it's by definition not going to be that big of an opportunity, right? Because if they have time to call, then they're not running that big of a company, right? So, but I will tell you a couple things, and the first thing is why we're talking about this today.
All right.
Okay, so what inspired this today is that Coldesi, we're a pretty big company in this business, but a year ago we started in the UV business as well. If you haven't seen our incessant emails on the compress UV printer and what it can do, you should definitely look at that because it's an amazing machine. It does a lot of different stuff. But we're getting the attention of some very big companies. And by big, I mean international sporting goods companies that you would recognize the name. And we've been learning that, most of the time we're talking to folks like you that are, it's a small shop or you're just getting into business, or maybe you've got kind of a regional online fulfillment business. You're our customer right now.
Yeah, 100 employees or less.
Mm-hmm.
Like within that range, which is probably a lot of your customers as well.
Right.
If you're listening to this podcast, more than likely you're about to start or you own a custom apparel business, and you probably have less than 100 employees yourself, and your customers probably have less than 100 employees.
Right. So normally when you call us, whether it's for a digital heat FX system or a DTG printer or something like that, we know that we are talking to the person that's probably going to make the decision, or that person's husband.
Yeah,
it's going to be one or the other. Maybe it's a small group. So it's a pretty good conversation to have because we know that everything we tell you is going to go into the decision making process. All the videos that you see and the literature that you read and the podcasts you listen to from us, they're all going to you, the decision maker, that's going to decide what they're going to do next.
Yeah, it's like yourself and a business partner, or there's 3 people, or maybe the owner isn't terribly involved. However, they rely heavily on maybe the 2 or 3 of you that run the business.
Right, but if the University of Tennessee calls, or if the world's biggest hockey stick manufacturer calls, and you're on the phone with the person that somebody else told to get the information.
Yeah.
Right, so if you're dealing with a big university and you get an RFQ or a request for quote for 1,000 or 1,200 shirts every 90 days, the person that sent you that quote is not making the decision. Right, they're not going to be the ones that says yes, I'm going to do business with you, because someone told them to go get that information.
Yeah.
And the person that told them to go to get that information might be gathering that information for somebody else. So it's a much more complicated process when you're dealing with the big company, kind of related to the opportunity, right? If somebody's going to buy one machine, one piece of equipment, they're going to buy a dozen or 50 custom T-shirts. The person that you're talking to is making the decision usually.
Yep.
If somebody's going to buy 1,000 a month, then probably you're not talking to the person that's going to make the decision.
Yeah, one of the first steps is kind of determining that.
Right.
Even though they are a really large organization, so it gets complicated. So I think the first step is maybe might just be kind of figuring out who is making the decision.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that is because there are really large organizations, multi-international organizations that subset out, and they subset out decision making, where there's divisions of Coca-Cola that operate locally here, that decisions for a lot of the things they do, including promotional items, are made on a local level.
Right.
So when they're calling up, you're actually just talking to, even though they work for Coca-Cola and that's who's going to write the check, they really are just operating a shop that is 50 people.
That's a good distinction. Right.
So it's kind of just, you need to make that first, I know it's a big brand, it's a big company. Yeah. Are they making a decision like a big company? Or am I just talking to the person who just has a credit card in their pocket and they have to make a choice?
Right.
So that's probably the first step is making that first rift on, even though they are a big company, how are they making the decision?
Right, and that goes to kind of like, this list of questions that you should ask if you have a big opportunity in front of you. One difference is if you get a small company that's interested in buying a dozen shirts, you're going to do your best to get that order while they're on the phone. Mm-hmm. If you get a large organization that is looking for a large quantity of clothing, you kind of want to slow down that process as much as you can, because you want to collect a lot of information before you send them a sample or give them a price. Right? So one of the first questions that you're going to ask is...
Let's go. We got a great list here.
Yeah, definitely. Is how are you going to make the decision on what company to go with? So what is it? Is it going to be the price? Is it going to be the quality of the shirt?
Yeah, the delivery time.
Right. Is it going to be delivered? Is it none of those things, and it's just availability of you personally to help if there's a problem? Maybe customer service is their hot button. So finding out some of these things like why are you, like you had said kind of when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
Like the University of Tampa has bought hats before.
Yes. Yeah, if you're talking with a large organization, a big company, and they contact you because maybe you're local to their area.
Yep.
When they did a Google search, they found you, or they saw a sign, or you know them. You kind of know somebody within the organization, through networking or a friend of a friend, and I know somebody that's in purchasing for this really large company. I'm going to give them your information, so they contact you. But it's not the first time they've bought shirts.
Right.
It's not the first time they've bought hats, but they are speaking with you again. So why? Maybe every year they have to get 3 quotes.
Yeah.
And they're always going to go with that first person.
It's so disappointing when that happens. And I think we see that a lot on the Custom Apparel Startups group. Mm-hmm. I think, a new business comes in and they get that call from a local school system that wants you to outfit all of the employees for the county schools. And they don't pause. The immediate question is, well, what should I quote? This is what they want. Says, well, why are they sending this out to bid? Because like Mark said, it's not the first time that they've done this. So what happened? Are they required to get new pricing? Every year or every 2 years or whatever the cycle is. And are they just using you so they can check a box to say that they got 3 quotes?
Yeah.
And in that case, you don't want to spend any time on it at all.
Yeah, so it's kind of just, I have to get new pricing. So you find out. And the thing is when you're talking to some of these people, especially when you're dealing with like a request for a quote or an RFQ, you can deal with a very a cold-fronted person.
Yeah.
So I need to get a quote on this. Okay, I just need to get a quote on it. Okay, so you're going to have to one of the best things you can do is this person probably knows a lot of information.
Right.
They've made this decision before. They've seen other things. They've got everything in front of them. They're holding all the cards in their hand.
Yes.
And all they know that they can just call companies up and say, "This is all I need. I don't know that. This is all I need."
Right.
And that most of the time after the second breakdown, or the second wall put up,
Yeah.
you assume it's not going to be broken down, and you just go and you spend hours and hours trying to make a quote.
What's
and
the
you
best
never
price?
have.
Calling
Yeah.
Sanmar, what's my price on 500, polos a day, things like that.
When you never had a chance. So what you need to do is you have to try to break the wall down on that person a little bit.
Right.
Slow the conversation down with them. Try to see if you could build a rapport. Whatever. Empathize with them. All the things that we've talked about in other podcasts.
Yeah.
Get the information from that person. If they just turn around and say, "Oh yeah, we've used the same company for 10 years. We just have to get new quotes every year." Are you out? Chances are, if they use the same company for 10 years, they probably have a relationship.
If nothing's broken.
Nothing's
Yeah.
broken. That company probably has ingrained in a really low margin.
Yeah.
More than likely on this product. And they've got all the designs done so they can afford to do it cheaper. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. So you've got to kind of put that on your mind. When do you just not waste your time on it?
Right. So if you get that RFQ in, and you start asking these questions before you give somebody a price. And the first one is going to be, or maybe the first one is going to be, you can tailor this to your own personality and your own methods. How are you doing this now, and where are you getting it done? And you can even say it just like Mark Vila did, and you can even say, obviously this isn't the first time you bought shirts.
Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not the first time you bought shirts. Tell me, what's making you go out for looking for a new vendor.
Yeah.
And it could be, says, well, we have to do it. Says, okay, I understand. What, and then you can go and take a different tack. If you find out that they really are just checking a box.
Yeah.
Then it maybe says, okay, well, does it really matter what I quote you? Are you, pretty much going to go, is it really a cheapest price thing, or what are the other factors that might win me the business?
Yeah. And one thing I was thinking about with that is you really have to find out the things that are really like hot reasons to get excited.
Right.
So when they say, "How are you doing this now?" We were using the same company for 10 years. They just went out of business. Or we were using the same company for a while, and last year we had so many quality control issues. We have to find a new vendor. Or
yes.
We have our sports and athletics department buys a lot of things from the sports and athletics shop. But when we requested a quote for some of these other items, they kind of said that wasn't what they do. Maybe they were looking for full color T-shirt prints, and they're only a screen printer that they're kind of, they stop at 6 colors.
Yeah.
Maybe, that's kind of the max they do. Anything beyond that, they're not set up, so they turn that business away.
Yep.
And you've got like a DTG or a digital heat effect system. You could do full color. That's why you've got this opportunity.
Yeah, there are like 4 things you just said that would cause me to be excited, because now you've identified opportunity where you might be able to leverage yourself into the business. So the more information that you get up front, the more likely you are to win, to get a new customer.
So the first one, so the first question should be, as we mentioned, who's making the decision, right?
Yeah.
And then the second question we said so far is, how did you say even how they're going to make the decision yet?
No.
Did we talk about that?
No,
So I know that's
no.
on the list, but the second one we said was then, how are they doing it now?
Right.
And then, so I think next is how are they going to make the decision?
Yes,
Right.
I agree.
So talk about that.
Yeah. So
What do you think?
So if somebody says, so there's 2 questions here. So one of them is, what I mean by how are you going to make a decision? What I really mean to say is, how is a decision going to be made?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the process for, what happens? I'm going to give you a quote. Then what happens?
Yeah, we know step 1 is they call out.
Yeah, you're looking for a price. Yep. Are you going to ask for samples? What is your process? So do you get pricing and then order samples and compare quality? What do you take the prices in a stack and you go up to the president of the university and he goes through them and just picks the lowest number? Specifically, both physically, how is that decision made? What's the process? And who's going to make it in the end? So you can be prepared in advance, because if you ask that question, if you ask what's the process for making a decision, then you'll start to identify the people that are going to be involved.
Yeah, and take notes on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we've talked about having a CRM, just as a side note,
Right.
On other episodes. So having a place where you can take all these notes. You should ask all these questions and note them, vigorously with every detail you can.
Yeah.
So you can really analyze it.
Yeah, so who's going to be involved in, what's the process, and who's going to be involved in that process? So if, for example, there's the purchasing manager, and you're talking to the purchasing manager, and you're looking up the purchasing manager on LinkedIn, and Facebook to see if you're connected in some way at all. You find out that it's going to go to the head purchasing manager.
Yeah. Some sort of levels of management.
Yeah, levels of management. So you want to identify all those people if you can and what they do, so you can figure out different ways to appeal to them. For example, if you're going to need to submit a sample, and that's part of the process, well, now you can submit a sample with the university logo on it. But if you look and you find out the purchasing manager went to school there for philosophy, then you can do a university T-shirt with the philosophy department. If you know that it's going to go to the sports committee, because they decide on all the apparel at the university or the college or wherever it is, then you're going to find out, well, okay, so the sports committee, here are the two people in it, they both played football.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to do something, I'm going to tailor my sample. So you're looking for these little areas of differentiation, and you need this information in order to get those.
Yeah, and it also comes into the information, like if they mentioned quality control was an issue, which is why they're looking to possibly change a vendor now, is because last year was a quality control. See if you can find out what that was. Say, I sell, and the question may go like this, okay, great, I sell apparel from T-shirts that go for kids' birthday parties that are basically throwaway shirts that people wear like once and then they wear them as smocks to paint. Yeah. All the way up to premium, Nike polos that are, $80 a piece. So I sell this level. What was it about the quality control that wasn't satisfactory? Right. And they'll just say what it was. It might be something, great that you can easily fix. Like, the design was just poor. The colors weren't right.
It washed out after one wash.
Yeah, or the digitizing and the embroidery was a poor quality. None of the shirts, all the shirts were puckered on our embroidery. You can find that out. Or they might say all the shirts shrunk. Right. So this information, and right away the level of apparel you have to sell. Right. If they say, we had Adidas shirts last year, and and just the quality of the embroidery wasn't as nice as we wanted to, that you can go ahead and quote them, an Adidas, a Nike, and maybe a generic similar option, if you want to give them a few options, and then you can, note in there like a quality guarantee. Yeah. Or a wash guarantee. If the design puckers after a wash, I know how to embroider it correctly. Things like that.
And I like that. If they do kind of identify, like if you ask them about how the decision is going to be made or what's most important to you, is another way to say that, is, if somebody says quality, or you've already identified that as an issue, you can kind of guide their process too and ask them the question. Says, well, I offer a variety of different price points of shirts. Are you going to ask all of the people that submit quotes to send you a sample so you can verify the quality?
Yeah, so you actually can maybe encouraging the sampling process is something that can benefit you.
And you're also saying that if he wasn't already going to do that, then they are now. Yeah. Because you've identified quality as being very important. The only way that they're going to be able to know that is if they get a sample, and you're the person that introduced that.
Yeah, right? And too often what happens in any business, and this isn't just for us, but when you're not used to doing this, or you're new into sales, or you're a bit of an amateur in a small business world, what happens is somebody calls you up and asks for a price, and you just give them some sort of a price, whatever it might be, and you have no clue what they're looking for. So, your favorite, most popular shirt might be a T-shirt that's like a $5 shirt, right? Which is on the higher end of cost for a blank shirt. Right. But that's your favorite shirt. That's the one you like to sell. your customers love it the most.
Yeah.
However, this particular customer might be trying to find that throwaway type of a t-shirt. They're just trying to find something, very inexpensive for a short run. What can I get a short run that's just a really low price?
Right.
So you've got to kind of find exactly what they're looking for before you throw out that price. I mean, and before you throw out a quote, period. That's kind of the bottom line.
And even if they do identify the decision is just going to be made on price, which is that first guy that you described calling.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to tell you. Is I'm just looking for the lowest price. Then you should say that back to them. So you're asking me to quote you on the cheapest shirt that I can possibly find and decorate it with your logo in the cheapest possible way. And that's what your decision is going to be based on, is how cheap I can find a shirt and how cheap I can make it. And if the answer is yes, and you're listening to this podcast, odds are you're not going to win.
Yeah, I mean,
there's always someone that will sell a cheaper shirt.
There's always someone that will sell a cheaper shirt, and also, this is so much dependent on your area. I mean, you should really, at this point in time, if you don't yet, you need to know who's your competition in the area typically, who's got big accounts. If you go and you stop into shops that have storefronts. Or maybe they don't have a storefront, but they're in a warehouse, and you go and you visit these shops, you take a look at it, you just find things out.
Yeah.
You find information. If you go out to networking events, you find out who do they use. If you're hearing a shop a few times and you find out, well, okay, this shop has, a 12 color automated heat press in 150,000 square foot warehouse, and they typically bid on these large jobs. Well, if it's a single one color design, or something like it's going to be tough for you to compete with that.
Yes.
Compared to when you know that they want high color short run. That's why they're calling is because we need to get 50 shirts. They're going to be different every week, and they're going to be pictures of things. They're going to be digital images. So we need 50 shirts a week for the next 5 years.
Right.
That's how you need that information to know if you can even compete.
Right. Because if, another scenario is, going back to, let's say it's a utility that wants polos for its employees, and you have a single head embroidery machine and no way to outsource it. So you don't have that relationship. If someone comes to you and wants, a huge number of polos with their logos on it and matching hats, and they want it delivered within 6 weeks, you can do the math very quickly and find out, am I realistically going to be able to do that? And then you can decide right there not to spend the time trying to sort of micro-analyze the cost of your hourly rate and how much you're going to make on the shirt and how many stitches it is, try to figure out how long it is, because just in general, I'm not ready for that job yet.
Yeah, and another thing, this is also an opportunity for you to, if you don't currently have an outsourced relationship when a job doesn't fit what you can do, and that's not always necessarily the quantity of the garment, but the type of print that it is. This is also an opportunity for you to go out and try to find a partner to outsource with.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I'll tell you, in the years being in this industry, absolutely, there are customers who bought equipment from us. Mm-hmm. The reason they bought equipment from us was because they were doing jobs, really big jobs for, say, the local school district or something like that. They didn't own any equipment.
Yeah,
they had the opportunity to bid.
Yeah.
They went and they got a bid. They marked it up the percent that they felt was good enough for them to do business, and they ended up winning the bid. And now they're coming to purchase equipment later, maybe because when they do the short runs, they can't bid it out to that place. They can't shop it around. They need short run stuff, but they're still going to outsource, or they're looking to get a couple of two heads and 2 single head embroidery machines because they're ready to bring it in house.
Right.
So use this opportunity to hone up your skills on outsourcing if you haven't done it yet. Even if you don't get the bid, it's a great opportunity to go out there, get the quote, write it up, and get some experience doing it.
And I kind of like that word fit, because where you can, it's great. It's great to be asked to the dance. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's wonderful to be nominated. But you really want to make sure before you take on a large opportunity, part of that process that we're talking about, where you're talking on the phone with somebody or you're exchanging emails, with somebody, you're asking all of these questions. This is kind of an interview process for both of you to see if you're a good fit. Because what you don't want is you don't want to get a job from a large organization and then not be able to fill it properly. Because really, it'll do a couple things. It'll kill your cash flow, and it could really hurt your reputation in the community, especially if you're in a small or mid-sized town and everybody works for the utility.
Yeah.
And you screw up that job, says, "Oh, geez, you did this job? I washed that shirt once and it came right out."
Yeah. If the local paper factory is in your within a 100-mile area and 100-mile radius, and 20% of the people work there, and then you've got the opportunity to bid for this job, you need to do everything that we said above, and there's nothing wrong with realizing when it's also time to turn it down.
Yeah.
There's one large screen print shop. You call that company up, let me try to outsource this. So you call the company up, and maybe it's not. This order sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Then you kind of put two and two together.
Everybody in town got this quote.
Yeah. And then you and you contact them back. I see you might be working with a couple of these organizations or something like that. I think this is a better fit. Or you just kind of you refer it out to somebody else, and you pass it along, and you say, but this is
Please
what
keep
I
me
can
on your,
do.
Yeah, keep me on your list, by the way. Definitely call me next time as well.
Yeah, and take all of these as an opportunity to sell something else to this organization that would be a great fit for you. So if you get the quote in and you've got one DTG printer, one heat press, one embroidery machine, whatever it is, you're a fairly smaller shop and you get an order in, that's huge. Right? So you go through all these steps. You maybe try to outsource it a bit and quote it out, and you find out you're not going to get it. Or you just find out that you don't want to take this business.
Yeah,
it's not the right
not
fit.
a good fit.
I can't outsource to anybody reasonably for the cost that they're looking for. Which, by the way, is another thing to just ask. Ask them if they have a price they're trying to reach.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll just tell you.
Yep.
But after that, now you pitch, hey, who else there? You already know who else there makes decisions on these things. And then you can turn around and say, you know what, I can't do this job for you. I'd like to respectfully decline this because it really doesn't fit what my niche is, the products that I do. However, what I would love to do is send out a sample of some of the things I am great at.
Yeah,
and some kind of pricing on that, and send you a couple samples. And I see, so and so and so and so also make decisions. I'd like to send a little kit maybe to each of you.
Yeah.
And if you've done some good research ahead of time, like you mentioned, if you
don't want
you
can tailor samples.
You can do some tailor stuff. So if you are the small shop and you get the big opportunity, if you're the really big shop, or you're getting to be a big shop, you've got a lot of different equipment, you've got multiple heat presses, and you can handle this stuff, then this is your time to shine, and you've got to outpace everyone else.
Yeah, and you still need to go through this process. By
yes,
the way. If you're a
is
huge
the most
shop,
important.
this is even more important for you because you need to make sure that you're a good fit. So you keep getting these kinds of opportunities. So what we're talking about is how to deal with big opportunities that come in, the difference between dealing with a potentially large account and the typical kind of small and mid-sized account that you might be dealing with. When you're not dealing with the decision maker the first time, you get them on the phone.
Yeah.
So perfectly appropriate. You get the call, you get the email, you get an email, it's an RFQ for a large opportunity. You pick up the phone and talk to them, say, hey, listen, before I quote you on this, which I'm excited about doing, I'd love to ask you a few questions and make sure that my company is going to be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy can't help but say, okay. They're not going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And then you start down this path.
Yep.
Says, well, tell me how you do it now. Why are you making a change? How does this decision-making process work? Who else is going to be involved in making the decision? Is there a house favorite already? Mm-hmm. If you're just using me because you have to get a quote, I understand, but I'd love an actual chance at getting the business. What do I need to do that?
Yeah, and then what's most important: the quality, the delivery time, the price, the reliability, the ability to do a specific type of decorating,
Yes.
the ability to have a specific finish.
Right.
Washability, is that most important, or is that not as important as just the quality of the garment? They know that the shirts are going to get beat up, but they want the garment to hold together.
Yeah.
The design's going to get scratched up no matter what we put on it, but if it shrinks the first time, that irritates a lot of the folks.
Yeah, I mean, you may even find out that this big company has been dealing with another big company. They just don't like it. They're not getting the customer service.
It could be customer service, definitely.
Yeah, say, great, your headquarters is like 5 miles from our business. I will load those shirts in the back of my vehicle, and I will come and deliver them in person.
Yeah.
You know.
And definitely maintain a professional type of, with it goes without saying, but maintain a professional demeanor with these organizations. Find out what they're looking for. Okay, is this something that you'd like to set an in-person meeting for? Because I do that for other organizations that I work with as well, where I bring some samples out. I show them to all the folks who are going to make the decision. You have to find this information out. You have to really just know as many facts as you can, and any question that pops into your head, you've got to ask it, and then ask it again. If the answer they provide you, it doesn't really answer it, ask it again in a different way. But the information is going to be the key for all of this.
So I like that, asking things in a different way. We've kind of restated the same questions in different ways since the podcast started, but just something like, other than a good price, what do you need from me to help you make a good decision? Other than a good price, what do you need from me to help you make a good decision? So what you're saying there implicitly, I'm going to give you a good price.
Yeah.
May not be the cheapest price, not going to be the most expensive price, but what else do you need from me?
And with this, when you're doing this, it's important to understand and have done some of the homework that we've talked about in previous podcasts.
Yeah.
But, knowing how much it actually costs to run your business, knowing the lifetime value of customers, and factoring your time in as a cost, whether paying yourself, however you're doing it, factoring in your cash flow on what it's going to cost you to bring this in.
Opportunity costs.
Yeah.
So, if this is going to take you 20 hours a week, are you going to pass on other jobs that you would have been doing in those 20 hours? Do you have to bring on extra help to fill this job? Are you going to need to maintain the equipment? You've got to think about bringing more supplies in for this job on an ongoing basis and keeping that on the shelf. So you have a lot of things to do, especially if this is your first big account. You've got a lot to think about before you just say, oh my God, how cheap can I sell this for?
Yeah.
Here's my price.
And that's a part of the challenge with the pricing, is people ask how to price.
Yeah.
So every business has to operate within a certain percent margin or a certain percent profit that works for their business, right? And that's different for everyone. So, for Coleman and Company, for example, we've got live people on the phone, live chat. We do fast delivery, and everything.
It's expensive to do.
It's expensive to do some of those things. So the particular amount that we have to make has to be able to afford to do that.
Right.
And your business has to be able to afford to do that too. Yeah. So if your business is run out of your home and it's just you, your cost of operation, you've got opportunity there compared to somebody who just opened up a new boutique,
right?
In the mall. So if you go to a mall, and the reason why you go to a mall and a T-shirt could be $40 for a single, there's a store here, they have $40 for a black shirt with a front and back.
Yeah.
For one of them, right? Yeah. And if you post that online on the CAS group, and people, that's crazy, nobody would ever pay that. Well, they're in the mall.
Yeah.
For one reason,
happens all the time, actually.
Yeah. For one reason, there's a different customer there, and the other reason being is they have to be able to make that money to be able to stay in the mall. Yeah. So you've got to determine what margin can you work off of that you can afford to do all the things you want to do, that you can afford, and you mentioned opportunity cost, all that. And then quote on that margin.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what anyone else on a forum says they quote at. It doesn't matter any of those things. This is what you have to do. And if you send that bid out and you put value in it, you may or may not get the business.
Yep.
But if you do not get the business because of the price, then Well, that's what you needed to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
You couldn't have done it.
You could have dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this. I think I've told this story before about, occasionally if some of our customers are struggling and they think it's marketing, sales will refer them to me and you to talk to them about ways to market their business, and we'll take a look at pricing and everything. And we're glad to do stuff like that for you guys too. But this one customer had a digital heat effect system, and he was in a small town with one big company. And he had gotten this system specifically to fill orders for this one big company and a couple of smaller ones.
Okay.
And there was a screen printer in town that was selling shirts for $8 a piece to this company. Well, after and this guy had gotten some of that business, and basically he couldn't make his lease payment.
Okay.
Right? So he couldn't make his lease payment, which was only about $300 a month. And the reason is because he had matched that screen printer's price. So they were doing a one color shirt, selling it for $8, and this guy was paying like $250 for the shirt and $250 for the transfer, and it took him a certain amount of time to do it. So he was literally breaking even if he did not include his labor.
Yeah.
In this deal, every time he did it, and he was so frustrated he couldn't figure out why he wasn't making money. And it's because he priced out the clothing incorrectly, he didn't have the help he needed, he didn't have the equipment that he needed to respond specifically to that quote. He didn't call anybody to outsource it looking for a better price. He didn't ask these questions.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to make this decision? Well, I'm going to make this decision because I've been buying $7 shirts for the past 15 years. I'm going to keep doing that. Okay, pass.
I can't afford to run.
I can't afford
make
to do
any
that.
money.
And his biggest mistake was never doing the math before he said yes. So it's not like we want to encourage you not to do these big deals. We want you to be in a position to do them profitably, where you can say yes confidently, knowing that you're going to make some money. And you're not going to be able to do that without doing this upfront work for a big opportunity.
Yes, and I think that if you start to do this upfront work and you realize that with the equipment that I own, this is right for me. I can do this. I've been waiting for this. Then you need to make sure that you get your math right, get your margin right, get it down, because that other folks out there are going to go slim on that margin, especially if it's really large. So slim that down to where it's still profitable for you and it's worth the time to do it, and then go hard after that, and let them know that before you make the final decision, could I have the courtesy of a call or letting me know, if you're not going to choose me, what that reason might be, and if there's anything I can do to remedy that. Because I've asked you a lot of questions, but some of the things here I still have to make assumptions on.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what else you're getting quoted on. And if you get that opportunity to get that call back, and they're going to say, hey, we're looking at another company, and the reason is, it really just, they're going to do the same shirt, they're going to do the same exact thing, except you've got a $200 setup fee every time we want to redo an order, and they said they were going to waive that for us.
Yeah.
And you do some math, and you say, you know what, for this customer, I'm doing my margin was here, now it's going to be here. You know what, I'll do this deal with that, and you get that opportunity.
Yeah.
So do that math and know that it's probably going to have to be slim, but it has to be something that's profitable.
Or maybe you go through this whole process and you learn that it's not the price that's really their driving factor. So everyone else is quoting the cheapest thing that they possibly can, but you send them a beautiful, high quality polo shirt with amazing embroidery and a matching cap. With all of that personal kind of information that you found out about everybody. And they just decide to go with you, even though your quote is higher, because it was the quality and no one else asked that question.
Yeah, and which is so true. So true. The idea with everything in this, and we're trained to think that price is everything, right? Because that's what billboards are. 99-cent hamburger, 5,000 off MSRP on a car. 0% interest. Everything is that people are you're trained to see that low price, and you're assuming that. However, there's a lot of high-end car companies that are in business doing very well, and in fact doing better than the cheaper
Yeah, it's not because
companies.
they sell cheaper cars.
Yeah, they're doing better than the cars that sell cheaper things, and we also find that a lot of our customers that are extremely successful,
Yeah.
and are being consistently successful for years, they make sure that they're making money on their deals, and they're not selling shirts. And when we talk to somebody,
They're good at math.
and they're good at math. They do math. And when we talk to somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm doing these DTG shirts and I sell them for $4 a piece. Then we turn around and
I think we've had that conversation too.
I do math, and I'm just like, so what's the trick, man?
Right,
Like, what's the trick? Because I'm doing the math here, and like the most you can make is this.
Yeah. What do you do for a living?
Yeah,
That's
and
really
that's what I'm getting started with, and again, these are all things. Actually, one gentleman said I can afford to do them now because I'm not quite breaking even. I make a little bit of money,
Okay.
but what I'm doing this for is the opportunity, because I'm making tons of connections, and the other shirt I sell custom shirts, so it's lifetime value type of a thing.
So that's math too.
It's math, lifetime value of the customer. So this isn't just about this podcast isn't just about how to do this, but it's about you have to understand the things that we've talked about in all of our
we did
podcasts.
actually a good podcast on how to beat the competition.
Yeah.
By being different, not being cheaper. So that's a good one to look for. So we've got, and so one more point that I'd like to make is if you do engage in this process, you should always schedule a follow-up or know when the next step takes place. So if you've identified the process, you've talked to whoever your primary contact is, you found out that it goes through these steps, if you have to send samples or not, or it just goes to committee, or the homeowners association has to meet, whatever it is, that you know when you should follow up and you should schedule that. I mean, it's great when somebody remembers you and they remember to call when a decision makes because they really enjoy giving you bad news. No, most of the time it's going to be, when are you going to decide? I'm going to decide by the time school starts. Okay, great. That's September 4th or whatever it is. Can I call you on September 6th to go over your decision? Because I'd like to find out if I won, and if I didn't, maybe we can. Yeah. Maybe I can do better next time.
Yeah, that's great.
So schedule everything. Okay, you're going to take it to this person? Great. I'm going to call you the next day to find out how that went and just see if there's anything else that I need to do for you. That kind of thing is a good process to go through when you're going after these bigger deals.
Yes, and you're building rapport with that gatekeeper type of a person as well is important. That's why I said if they've got walls up, try to break them down, because they will have a level of influence on this decision, whatever that might be, even if it's just they're going to print everything out and they put yours on the top of the pile. It could be anything like that. So we don't know, but we can probably blast through kind of some of these questions again, because I want everyone to kind of write this down, consider this, and make sure that this is more than just a phone call and a price, and don't forget that, because
that's not a recipe for winning.
Yeah, it's not. It isn't. So some things that we add here. So the things you need to know.
Yeah.
Right. How are you going to make the decision for what company to go with? Know what the criteria is. What is most important? The quality, the speed, the price, the reliability of the garment, the type of garment that's produced, the type of decorating that's being done, whatever it is, the options, the ability, whatever it are. You have to find out what are going to be one or two or three of the key decision-making points.
Yeah.
How are they doing it now? They probably are doing it now. Or they did it last year, or whatever it is. How did they do it? How did that decision get made? How happy were they with the results?
Yeah, why did you make a change?
Yeah. Is there currently a house favorite? Right. So do they just have to get quotes, but they use the same company and they've been using the same company for 25 years?
Yeah.
Things like that. If there is a house favorite, why are they getting quotes?
Yep.
And find out why. Go ahead and just ask them questions that are bold that you think they might not answer, and because we had a note here, like, who else are you considering?
Yeah, I like that.
Or is there a price you're trying to get to now, or is there a price you paid last year that I can, take a look at what you ordered? Do you have an old quote you can send me so I can compare what I can do, because what I might be able to do is offer you a better value. And that
Right.
doesn't mean a better price.
Yeah.
It means a better value.
And this may or may not be okay for the purchasing agent that you're talking to. So, some purchasing agents might say, I can't do that, I'm not allowed to. And some people might say, yeah, no problem, here you go. It'll make my life easier because you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And when I worked in sales, and if I knew they were shopping around, I definitely would just ask. And I would say almost half the time, if not more, oh yeah, I don't have a problem doing that.
Yep.
A lot of people don't mind throwing the chum in the water and watching the sharks go around. So they don't buy, I'll send you my quote, and I'm going to send you theirs too, by the way. Yours too, okay. All right, let's do it then.
That's my second least favorite analogy.
What's your first, the biker?
It's the biker. Is walking to the biker bar and you see a girl.
I don't know if I came up with that one.
No, you did. It wasn't me out of the two.
No. It was the gentleman, the marketing and not copyright, trademark. Okay. Wasn't it his example?
I think it was yours.
We'll go back and listen.
Okay.
But they will like that.
Yeah, so the next one is you have to know how the decision making process works.
Yeah.
And just ask them that, and then let them tell you. I decide. We get all the quotes and we throw them up in the air and we pick one that's on top.
Yeah.
We go for the cheapest one. No, so is it you that's saying yes or no, or do you have to does it go to a purchasing agent? Does it go to the department head? Can you kind of break that down for me how that happens?
Yes, and then when will the decision be made?
Yeah,
find out when it's going to be
deal.
made so you can make the phone call, a follow up, or whatever it would be. And then one additional thing we didn't mention that it popped in my head though was. If this is coming over the phone or via email, if you can ask for an in-person interview with all of or more than one or the decision makers, you've got an opportunity to impress them and an opportunity to, because oftentimes, decisions aren't always made on price.
Yeah.
And sometimes decisions are made on price, but then you get to change the game of kind of what the standard is. Right. So the cheapest thing that they could absolutely do would be to not buy T-shirts and just get markers and write it on the guy's chest for the football game. Right. That doesn't exist. Right.
Yeah.
They have shirts. Well, they don't actually have shirts in a football game. They have jerseys. They don't actually have jerseys. They've got specific types of jerseys, right? So it's there's levels up. So you've got the opportunity to go in there and kind of change the game. I love that
because if you get to talk to more people in the process, you may get the directive from the person that you first talked to that sent out the RFQ that they're just looking for the cheapest shirt. And then if the question to the next person up the chain is, now, so far I've been instructed to quote the cheapest thing that I can find to put your logo onto. Is that really what you are after? Because I can do that.
Yeah.
But I had some other ideas. And that person might say, what are you talking about? So if the second person in line says quality is really important, then all of a sudden everyone that purchasing agent talked to beforehand is now kind of out.
Yeah.
Because you're going to quote them on a higher quality shirt, and everybody's going to know that it's not going to be the cheapest.
Yes, and also another really important thing to ask is what is the budget?
Right.
Do they have a budget that they have to hit? That's such a simple one, but what's the budget? What are you guys trying to spend?
Right.
And they might turn around and they might say a number that might turn you off right away, or they might send you a number that you're like, you know what? I could do some really awesome stuff with this budget.
Yeah.
And then in the quote, you quote them the shirts, but you also quote them some hats or some koozies or some coolers or other promotional items you might sell that still fit within the budget as add-ons.
Yeah.
And then they choose you, not necessarily because the shirts were the best price,
right,
or the caps were the best price, but you're the one that also offered the can coolers or whatever it was, tote bags. And they just automatically pick you because, let's go with this company because they also do this and this too.
And I would not, that's a great point. I wish we would have done it sooner because most of the people that are listening to this podcast have already stopped listening by now. Usually we get about 20 minutes in and then that's when they drop off. So we save all the good stuff for last, just so you know.
Yeah, just for the good people.
But it's even if you do get somebody that requests a quote on price, and that's how the decision is going to be made, but you do decide to participate anyway because you can handle that deal. Don't be shy about amending the quote and adding those extra things as well. because maybe they weren't thinking about getting hats.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they hadn't considered koozies and coolers, or maybe that's part of a separate process that you're not being offered because you have t-shirt in your name. So you might have a bigger opportunity or an opportunity at more. Maybe they'd really love to deal with one person that can do all these things. So you get a request for t-shirts, and you also, by the way, put a couple of prices down for caps, for koozies, for bags, for the other stuff that you're good at.
Yeah.
Maybe at a little bit higher margin still, and you might end up with that deal that way.
Yeah, and it's great. And then don't forget at the very end, if you feel that you can't do the job, or the job is not a fit for you, take this opportunity to outsource to another company. Here's the other things that I do. Can I outsource this job? Is there a company that I can kind of be an affiliate for?
Right.
Or if I get them the job, then they'll pay me a % for the sale. Do I just straight out deny it, but then try to go in for other opportunities in the future that might exist right now?
Yeah.
So don't let the say, ooh, there's no way I'm going to get this bid, turn into a disappointment and a failure of your business.
Right.
Turn it into an opportunity to either learn how to outsource, learn how to affiliate, or learn how to upsell to a customer that might not have thought about something before.
Love that, because if you can establish a relationship there, then you've got a relationship with a big organization that maybe you can't help now, but you will be able to help in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that a lot.
Plant the seeds.
So, so what I like about this episode, I think, is that let's say the points that I would like people to take away from it.
Okay.
Are when you get a big opportunity, slow down. Right? You don't want to react to it immediately. What you want to do is collect as much information as possible, like we described. So you can think about the opportunity, look for ways to give yourself the best advantage in order to get that opportunity. But get the information one way or the other in the end, so you can decide yes or no, whether or not I actually want to go after it. And then, what's your best strategy to win?
And don't, and if you do decide to go to social media or forums or Facebook and ask groups how they would do it, and you get answers, remember that there are tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that do this, that quote on this type of work, even if they're not in your industry, millions of people.
Yeah.
And 4 people are going to respond. And if 2 of them are discouraging, well, let them be the ones that lose.
Yeah.
You listen to podcasts like this, do other research online, whatever you can. If you get a couple people that said, oh yeah, I got such and such company, which is similar in my area, and I did the shirts for this dollar amount, and you look at that and you're like, I can never sell it for that. That's not within. Okay, well, that's not the company you're bidding on. That's not your area.
Yeah.
So never let online forums blow you up too much.
Yep.
Don't let them shrink you down too much.
Yeah.
Just if you choose to go there, use them as a tool. Everything that we said, use it as a tool.
Yeah.
Put all the knowledge together and go for it, because you're the only one that can win that deal.
Yep. It's your business.
Yep.
I think that was good.
All right, very good then. Well, I think it's time to wrap it up. Let's encourage people to do some things.
Okay, first of all, I would just like to say that this episode has been sponsored by the new embroidery grip. From Coleman and Company, which
cool.
we now have the ability to there's a hooping device that will allow you to grab a sneaker again and customize the sneaker.
Yeah.
So if you are an embroiderer and you're up against that big deal, then maybe you can offer some embroidered sneaks, and that will be a winner for you.
That'll take you to the next level. Yesterday, past few days of messing around with it, but I went in there and I embroidered a shoe, and then I unclipped it, and I put a baby bib.
Okay.
And then I did that, and I unclipped that, and I put a tote bag on.
Right.
And unclipped that, and then I put a karate belt on.
Okay.
And unclipped that. And so I did 4 designs in a row, back to back from each other, just switching out the design. And all I did with the hoop was just make adjustments to the width, how wide the design was.
Yeah.
And that was it. So it's a really cool device, and it's really well made too.
Yeah, you should look at it. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for listening. This has been Mark Stevenson from Coldesi.
And Mark Vila from Coleman and Company.
You guys have a good business.